Right now, you can open your phone and disappear into endless videos, games, messages, music, and streams. You can watch people cook, argue, travel, build houses, survive disasters, or explain the universe in 10 minutes. And somehow, even with all of that, you still feel bored. That makes the ancient world feel almost impossible to imagine. No screen, no books, no cities full of noise, no school bell, no job schedule, no headphones, no quick escape from silence. Just a small group of humans, a fire, a sky full of stars, and long, empty hours where nothing dramatic was happening. So the strange question is not whether ancient humans had fun. The stranger question is what they did when their minds started asking for something more. But we are not talking about ancient Rome, Egypt, or Greece. We are going much further back. Before temples, before writing, before kings, before farms, before calendars, before anything that looked like civilization. Imagine humans 100,000 or even 200,000 years ago, living in small groups, moving with the seasons, sleeping near fire, watching animals, listening to the wind, and waiting for food to cook, waiting for rain to stop, waiting for daylight, waiting for someone to return from a hunt. In those pauses, their brains had room to wander. For a long time, people assumed boredom did not exist back then. Survival was supposed to take every minute. But that picture is too simple. Hunter-gatherer life was hard, but it was not constant labor. There were long stretches of rest, talking, watching, and doing nothing urgent. And in those quiet gaps, ancient humans did not just kill time. They began turning empty time into imagination, play, memory, and meaning. That is where boredom stopped being a problem and became a powerful tool. When boredom appeared, ancient humans did not have a button to press. They could not cover silence with a song recommendation or a flashing screen. So the brain had to become the entertainment. It watched patterns in smoke. It noticed shapes in stone. It followed animal tracks even when there was no hunt. It imagined what might happen tomorrow or what might be hiding beyond the hill. This matters because boredom is not just emptiness. It is pressure. It pushes the mind to make something out of nothing. A quiet hour can become a question, a joke, a game, a memory, or the beginning of an idea. One of the simplest ways they answered that pressure was play. Children played, of course, but adults probably did too. They could chase, wrestle, copy animal movements, throw stones at targets, test balance on logs, or turn daily skills into small contests. Play looked useless, but it trained the body and the group at the same time. A child pretending to stalk an antelope was practicing patience. A young hunter throwing a stick for fun was improving aim. A group laughing around a fire was learning who was bold, who was gentle, and who could be trusted. Then boredom began to leave marks behind. At sites like Blombos Cave, archaeologists found tiny shells that had been pierced and stained with red ochre. These were not food, they were not weapons, they were beads. Someone spent careful time turning ordinary shells into something decorative. That small act says something enormous. Ancient humans were not satisfied with merely surviving. When they had spare time, they started changing how they looked, how they were seen, and how they belonged. Boredom did not just pass the hours. It gave humans the space to invent symbols. From symbols, the next step was art. Maybe it began with a line scratched into bone, a handprint on stone, or a shape noticed in the wall of a cave. A bored mind does not simply stare. It connects. It sees an animal in a shadow, a face in a rock, a memory in a mark. Once humans had time to look closely, the world stopped being only useful. It became meaningful. A wall could become a memory. A body could become a canvas. A piece of red earth could become color. Art was not just decoration. It was proof that humans could take something inside the mind and place it outside for others to see. The same quiet space may have helped create music. A bone, a reed, a hollow branch, two stones struck together, a rhythm made by hands near the fire. None of these things were necessary in the way food was necessary, but they changed the feeling of time. A long night became shorter when it had rhythm. A tired group became one body when everyone clapped, hummed, or moved together. Music turned boredom into shared emotion, and shared emotion turned strangers into a tighter band. And behind both art and music was imagination. To feel bored, a human has to sense that the present moment is stretching too long. That means the mind is already leaving the present. It is comparing now with what could happen next. Ancient humans sitting in silence could picture tomorrow's hunt, a storm that had not arrived, a predator that might be near, or a place beyond the mountains. In that wandering, the brain was training itself to imagine futures before they existed, and that ability changed everything. It turned waiting into planning. It turned fear into foresight. As imagination grew, boredom opened a darker door too. A human sitting beside a fire at night had time to think about things no animal could explain. What was that sound beyond the trees? Why did the old hunter stop breathing? Where did dreams come from? Why did the moon return after disappearing? These were not small thoughts. They were the first steps toward mystery. When there was nothing urgent to do, the mind began filling the silence with invisible possibilities. A shadow was no longer just a shadow. It could be a warning, a spirit, a memory, or a sign. That is why boredom may have helped create storytelling. A hunter could return and describe the animal that almost killed him. A grandmother could repeat a lesson from someone who had died. A child could ask what lived beyond the mountains, and someone could answer with a tale. Stories made empty time feel alive, but they also carried knowledge. They taught where danger waited, which plants were safe, which rivers flooded, and which mistakes could destroy a group. A story was entertainment, but it was also survival, wrapped in emotion. And when people told stories, they bonded. Around the fire, boredom became conversation. They talked about who was brave, who was selfish, who shared food, who lied, who helped, and who could not be trusted. That may sound like gossip, but gossip was social technology. It helped the group remember behavior without needing written records. It protected trust. It punished betrayal. It made everyone visible. In a world where survival depended on cooperation, talking about people was not wasted time. It was how a small band stayed together, judged character, and turned lonely minds into one community. And it made tomorrow feel slightly less unknown for the whole group. Over time, these small answers to boredom became culture. A bead was not just a bead. A rhythm was not just a sound. A story was not just a way to pass the evening. Each one told the group who they were. Maybe one band painted bodies before a hunt. Maybe another sang around the fire after someone died. Maybe one family kept a certain shell because it reminded them of a place near the sea. None of this was needed for calories, but it was needed for identity. Boredom gave humans time to build meaning beyond survival. Today, we kill boredom almost instantly. The moment silence appears, we reach for a phone. One empty second becomes a scroll. One quiet meal becomes a video. One lonely night becomes a screen glowing inches from the face. But the ancient brain was shaped in the opposite world. It needed pauses. It needed space between events. In those spaces, it sorted memories, replayed danger, imagined futures, and created connections. When we erase boredom completely, we may also erase the very condition that once made human thought deeper. So what did ancient humans do when they were bored? They played, they made beads, they scratched marks, they listened to rhythm, they told stories, they wondered about death, weather, animals, stars, and dreams. They turned empty hours into symbols, music, gossip, planning, belief, and art. They did not kill boredom by escaping it. They used it, and maybe that is the part we forgot. Boredom was never just a blank space in human history. It was the quiet room where imagination learned to speak. Ancient humans did not survive boredom. They transformed it, and in transforming it, they slowly transformed themselves into us.